Well, walking around Pismo Beach one day, I came across this scene here of the pier over the beach area with the two Airstream trailers on top. The trailers are used for commercial purposes. One is a restaurant and one is for retail items, I believe, and a little seating area in between with that nice umbrella. And it really struck me. It's got some symmetry to it, and it's kind of odd a little bit. But I do like those little windows or areas below the pier. They're not windows, but the areas sectioned off by the pier. It's like having four little seascapes down there with the figures in there. And that's what intrigued me. So I've got the foreground, the sand. I've got that area under the pier, which is dark with some contrast with the seascapes. And then I've got the area above with the trailers and the calm sky. So I'm going to attempt this in oil and we'll see how it goes. First off, I did make a quick charcoal sketch just to kind of familiarize myself with the composition and with the scene itself. So what I've done here is I've pre-toned the canvas with a transparent red oxide acrylic. Then I took a charcoal pencil and put in the major shapes. That helps me with placement and proportions and things like that. Then I sprayed a casein fixative over that so that we can paint on here without smudging or getting the charcoal off. Now what I'm going to start with are the darks, and they will be primarily in this lower section here. And I'm going to try to vary the darks between warm and cool as we go along. So let's see how it goes. So I've got some colors down here. You can see on my description for the YouTube which colors I'm using. For this particular session of doing the darks, I've only put down the burnt sienna, the ultramarine blue. Here's a violet blue shade. I believe this is a magenta or a rose. And then of course the white, which I pre-mixed with some of the linseed oil medium there. Start with some of this ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and then depending on the mix ratios, I'll get warm or cool out of that. It's pretty gray looking right now. What I can do is take a little bit of white here and see where that lands. It's a lot easier to see if you mix a little bit of white with it where it's going. And this looks to be somewhat cool, but it's fairly neutral. For this upper part right here, in this area here, I want to go somewhat warm because we've got some of the sand down here reflecting up here slightly. So I'm just going to add a tad bit more of this burnt sienna to it just to warm it up a bit. My goal for the darks under the pier are to mix colors that alternate between warm and cool, but also to add in some texture or leave brush marks. Make it look like a rough exterior or a rough area under the pier there. There is light reflecting off the sand and off of the other structures underneath the pier, so I'm adding in some very light pale blue and violet, I believe I mixed together in certain areas just to accentuate that reflection. I think I might try adding a bit more character to the underneath the pier look. Let's play around here and see what we can come up with. This is really an impasto technique using the silicone shaper. I can get wood looking or pier looking marks with it. Nice thing about the squeegee is it does make a nice straight line. Using the squeegee, I can make these straight lines for the railing, but I can also keep them fairly loose. Using the knife with a brush, I can create small, thin lines as well. I'm not following a photograph or reference for placement of these posts. It's really just what looks good by eye as I go along. I'm going to start on the sky now. The sky starts here and ends halfway between these openings here. So the horizon is really right about here. So it's mostly sky. So as I paint it, I have to realize that the shift in color and in tone or value shifts all the way down to here. The colors I'm going to be using for this: Ultramarine Blue, Cerulean Blue, we've got some rose or magenta, and the white. We'll take a look at that and see how that looks. You'll see me leaving holes for clouds, which I will put in, but later decide to take them out. I'm adding yellow ochre as I go down to add more atmosphere to the sky around the horizon. I'm having second thoughts about the sky. I think it's going to be the clouds are going to be too attention drawing. So I really want the lightness of the trailer, the sunlight reflecting off the top of these, to be the heroes, so to speak. So I think what I'm going to do is blend this in. It seems to be a theme amongst some of my paintings lately. I put a sky in and then decide it's too much. That's okay. That's what it's all about. I got a nice hair right there. Look at that. So the clouds are still there. They're just not as prominent. This 3-inch badger brush I use for softening seems to be shedding more these days, so you'll see me using the tweezers half a dozen times to get badger hairs off my canvas. Now I begin to work on the water areas in the seascape, the ocean, adding in some blues and whites, lights and darks. And then later I'll reshape some of these things as well as add in the sand in the foreground. Now I'm going to work on the trailers themselves, at least on the upper part. This is where we have some fairly bright highlights, and your eye is going to be drawn towards these two. Mix up some grays. I have some Payne's gray. I think I'm going to try some of that. So there's my somewhat neutral, warm and cool gray. After putting in the trailer on the left-hand side, I decided to wipe it out and start over. You'll see that a little bit later in the process here. The trailer on the right-hand side, I think I got in pretty well the first try, so 1 out of 2 is not bad. I think I need to start working on this area. I could do the umbrella, but I think I'll wait on that because I might want to change the sky a little bit. This area here is below the deck of the pier. It's just part of the structure. But I like the reflections and different tones that I get from these pieces of wood here. I'm going to add some of this color up here into this umbrella. And then I'm going to shift a little bit cooler over here. Tiny bit, although that's more of the trailer color. Don't really want that to happen there because it'll get confusing visually. This is actually coming out like that a little bit. Here, like that and like that. So this is coming out towards the viewer. Now I'm going to use this knife here to put in the railings that fall between the pier deck and the top railing. Rotating the knife as I go down just to deposit more paint. What I'm looking for is, there's a railing there, but it's not there. These rails here on the left-hand side are actually catching the light since they protrude out from the pier a little bit, so they're going to be in a lighter shade. These shapes are somewhat abstract, and nondescript items that are on the pier behind the railing there. Could be chairs, tables, boxes, who knows. They're just something to break up that pattern. Maybe a bluish greeny dark color. Take some of this blue. Small bit of the yellow ochre. I want to use the same yellow that I'm going to use in the sand. Maybe a little bit more of that. Let's park it over here. Needs to be dark. The element of blue in it is important too. Let's see if I add more of that. I can get it to lighten up a little bit too. I like the saturation of the color. There we go. Now we're starting to get there, I think. So some of that with some blue accents. So I'm going to park some of that blue over there too. Let's see how that looks. I think that'll be okay. Might want to lighten it just a bit here. Maybe the rest of this yellow ochre up at the top here. That'll give me an option to play around with some of that. You can see that I did paint in the sand earlier. It's awfully yellow and pretty striking. So I will wipe that out and start that over. I didn't want to use the time in the video to show me painting the sand and taking it out again, but I'll address that a little bit later. But before wiping the sand out, I'm going to wipe out the left-hand trailer, at least the top part of it, and then reshape that. My goal for this left-hand trailer was to make it a little bit less detailed than the right-hand trailer. So there's more of a dominant trailer on the right, and then the left hand it's there and you see it, but it's a little bit more abstract. Okay, so what I've done off camera is scraped out wiped out all of the yellow that was down here, and I'm looking at more subtle tones. So a warm and cool sand mix. This is Ultramarine Blue, titanium white, yellow ochre. This one's yellow ochre, burnt sienna, titanium white. And maybe a mix of those. I think I'll do more of the warm. Let's get some oil up in here. Do more of the warm mix first up towards the top. See how that looks. I'm going to try to use brighter, lighter colors up towards the top, up towards the shadow line of the area underneath the pier, and that will increase the contrast and increase the interest in that area. Now I'm going to put these figures in. I'm using a maul stick just to keep my brush steady. They are actually on the other side of the pier. We're looking at them through the pier openings there. I'm going to keep them fairly loose, and I'm painting these wet into wet. That allows me to keep them impressionistic looking. I've got some mixing of the lighter color with the darker there. These figures here in the middle are closer to us. They're just underneath or almost underneath the pier. So their legs are going to go down further, but their heads are going to be pretty much at the same height as the other figures. Thanks for watching me paint this picture at Pismo Beach. I enjoyed it. If this is something you like, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you like, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, bye.